Hello, and welcome to this Making Flexible Work workshop. Today I'm delighted to have Bjorn with us, who is going to share with us his experience of working in high-performance sport and what flexible work means. Bjorn is an entrepreneur coach, and he's a supporter of flexible work and a flexible working day ambassador. He has a strong background in sports, education and health, and is really focused on how we can bring our best selves to work. Thank you, Bjorn, for joining us today.
Thank you, Vanessa, for having me.
So before we kick off, tell me why your passion for high-performance sport and also flexible work?
Well, as a high-performance consultant for aspiring or highly skilled individuals and teams, we came down to see if there's any overlap in business, education and sport. And the majority came down to how do you work with those highly skilled teams and individuals? And it came down to flexible work and being flexible towards athletes and team members as a coach or leader. So that really triggered me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose you've lived that yourself.
Yeah, correct. For a little while, yes.
So, and it really is, we've been talking about flexibility for years, with flexible working day each year coming around. And what I've found is the conversation really has shifted from it being about entitlement for individuals to really about how people can bring their best selves to work, and for whatever they do in their daily life, whether or not sport or work or whatever they do, it's about how it can really support them. And that's, I think, some of the things that we've been speaking about around, and you see the direct benefit around performance.
Yeah, correct. And well, that's why I really support the idea of flexible work and flexible life. So I've noticed that there's a few things overlapping, and I thought it would be great to really give a few tools away that can be used for everyone. How about that?
I would love to hear that. And I think, yeah, for everyone listening, let's get into it.
Alrighty. So I wrote a few questions down. The first one was sport and everyday business. Is it really that different in regard to flexible work? So Ben Hogan once said, if you can't outplay them, outwork them. So how does it work if you're going to outwork them if you want to be flexible? Can I make a comparison?
Absolutely.
So let's say you work from 9 to 5. I compared it with an athlete. It's pretty much set times, and they really calculate and plan the day around training. Let's say you run a business 24/7. Athletes really live and breathe their sport. Same thing for coaches. So aside from their planning, they're also busy with what do they eat, how long do they sleep for, how to prepare for a game. So they have to be flexible in certain periods of the day or in the year. So is sport and everyday business really that different? The short answer, and that's just my opinion, is no. Flexible means for athletes and coaches being adaptable to the circumstances. And I guess that's the same in everyday life. Although for some people it stops depending on how you're situated in your life, as in work and your social surroundings. So, for example, for sport, it could be we call it in a technical term an annual training plan. So they have certain stages and certain periods they have to meet certain standards. Well, is that any difference to business?
Yeah.
No. So yeah, no, it's not really. You know what's been going on. You know how you want to work. You know when there's deadlines, and it's the same for athletes. So sport and everyday business is really that different? No, and you have to be flexible. There's a year plan. There's set deadlines. These you can work around in a little bit, but being flexible is how you work from day to day, in and out, with your training, with your commitment, as an athlete, with your food. Let's say protein instead of carbs. Let's say in the worst case scenario, you get injured or not selected. Well, then there's that new deadline. Maybe you don't meet your project. So you got to be flexible, but within your planning. And I think that makes sport and business straight. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Because that's the thing, like none of life or business or sport or anything is certain, and things change, and having that ability to be agile, like you said, if you get sick or you injure yourself, I think what came up for me when you were sharing that story was it's about flexibility in how you approach the training and, like you said, the nutrition and the sleep and everything like that. But it's also that flexible mindset to say, right, I have my mind on this goal and now things have happened and it's changed. How can you be flexible, like you said, to put in place the new goal around healing and rehab and all sorts of things, which is not terribly different to business. You know, if you lose a client or there's a certain thing that happens in your industry or business, it's the same hiccup that we all need to go through.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the listeners can agree in the overlap, and that you're constantly on the move for and look out for new challenges that you want to either achieve or overcome if it's a negative experience. Even that can bring, benefit to your new goal.
So if we liken coaches to managers, so if you say, right, the coach is the person who supports and guides and leads and keeps the athlete on track, and then you think about the equivalent in a business, I'm just guessing that maybe we could, make some like to a manager. I think one of the things that I keep hearing is, and I don't necessarily agree with this terminology, but managers just need to keep up and they need to just make it happen. And they're the reasons why flexibility is not embedded in business. Whereas I come from the perspective that if it's not a way that you've grown up in, and if it's, something that you're not used to or trained in, then it can be quite difficult. So it's almost that you don't know what you don't know. And what I was thinking just then when you were speaking about coaches is maybe it is part of their training around that growth mindset, about how you do need to be agile. What do you think? What's your experience, given you are a coach?
Oh, I totally agree. There's a huge shift amongst what coaches need to know, as in, for example, daily training, what kind of skills they need to learn or teach. It's no more or less transferring those skills on the athletes. It's also making the athletes part of the goal, shared responsibility, ownership, but also, and I think this is one of the first tools I'm going to give away, like how to deal with athletes, for example, off-field performance. There's two abbreviations. The first one is, KPI is knowing personal interests. So from a coach or leader point of view, you really want to know what's going on. And I think a great example is how can you prepare, as a listener, how can you prepare for a target that you have to achieve, or, for example, an important presentation? Well, there's still things on the background running that shift away your focus. I heard in the military, they do the same thing. Before they go on an important mission, they're really going to say, okay, is there anything we can help you with as a team, or as a leader, as your captain, for example? And it sounds crazy, but yeah, how can you go on a mission, or how can you prepare yourself, or how can you go to an important tournament while you still know that you're late on paying your mortgage, that your car won't start because it needs to be fixed? Like, it's the sort of first really tool is knowing personal interests. So what's going on? Take the time. It's not just a yearly review or quarterly review that you're going to do a performance interview. It's also like, okay, what's been happening in your life, And how does it contribute to your on-field performance?
Mm. And sometimes they're hard conversations, aren't they? You know, I think people don't like that confrontation generally. I know, you know, it's something I have felt uncomfortable with. When I went through my own coach training, I learnt to be far more comfortable with being uncomfortable, if that makes sense, because to bring people into their full capacity, and like what you're talking about here around performance, where there's so much going on. We're holistic people. We're not just made up of our work and our home life. There's so much else that makes us who we are. And sometimes, you know, I hear many people share stories around they don't trust their team or they struggle with performance and things like that. And one of the things that I often share is around job satisfaction, that everybody gets their job satisfaction, like you said earlier, from different things. Some people it's about security, being able to pay the mortgage. Other people it's because they get a lot of fulfillment out of the work that they do. Whereas others, you know, do the work for many other reasons because they really enjoy and are passionate about the subject matter. And so from your experience with coaching, am I right in saying that coaches really do take that time to understand what drives their individual athletes that they're working with? And as a result, they see outcomes, like you said, the KPIs around performance and other measures.
Correct. And I hope actually a lot of people do that, and not only coaches, but also managers. It doesn't matter which level you sit or which business you're in. I hope in sport, because it's such a personal experience, as in you work almost on a daily basis. They call this daily training environment with people. So often we talk about like the American way of saying, okay, it's people and then process and the product could be the end result. So yeah, it's getting to know them, and it's making sure that it's also fit. Sometimes the best people are not always the best in what they need to do, but if they fit the team and uplift the standards, like that's a whole new story.
I love your question here. So deadlines for sport, how to be flexible, because obviously, yeah, some deadlines are fixed. Can you elaborate on your experience there?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, from our client base, we often hear the word deadline and stress involved with that, high pressure, and that's obviously where we give advice in. However, if we then really make a comparison to sport and say, okay, well, when was your deadline? Yeah. Well, it was in 1st of July, but now it's already the 28th of August. We straight away go in, what do you think about the Olympics? Does that ever move? And well, we can all agree it doesn't. We know when it's going to start. It's going to be next year, 2020 in Tokyo, and you cannot just change. It won't change till December. It's not going to be suddenly the Winter Games. So yeah, you got to be strict. So the question is, how can we be flexible while there's such fixed deadlines? And the answer to that is that, well, you're not going to be flexible on the dates. You cannot be flexible on the process because you know you got to peak at some stage. So, but where you can be flexible on is the personal commitments, is the needs of the athletes. It could be something in the food, like not everybody needs to eat peanuts. If you're allergic to it, why would the whole team eat peanuts? So, and people then, like yourself now, Vanessa, start laughing about it. But often we do it so much, and we step on each other's toes by trying to do the same thing for everyone.
Yeah.
Don't you agree?
Oh, look, I've got a passion for functional nutrition, which I study part-time. That's another reason for my flexible love at the moment. And one of the things that we talk a lot about, it's through the US. I actually had a meeting on it this morning, a workshop exam And one of the things we talk a lot about is bio-individuality with regards to nutrition. And your point about peanuts made me laugh because we did talk about that this morning. But bio-individuality comes into play in every aspect of our life. It's not just the nutrition. And like what you said, I loved what you said around you've got the deadlines, you know what needs to be delivered, you know what the outcome is, but it's the process by which you can get to that can be flexible. And I think that's one of the things that many organisations now are saying, right, we get this. Let's give our teams more autonomy. I think for me, I'm hearing more and more the conversation go past office work and flexibility for people who work in offices, that knowledge base, to more around people who haven't had that flexibility or haven't perceived that they've had that flexibility, and they work in environments that are customer facing or retail or on projects in mining, all of these kinds of roles. The conversation that I'm hearing more and more is exactly what you just said. We're clear on what the outcome is, we're clear on what the deadlines are, but we're flexible on how it's done. I think you put it beautifully.
Yeah, and I had a question a few weeks ago, and I said, well, the famous quote from Vince Lombardi said, oh, winning isn't everything, but the will to win is. So how do you translate it into sport where there's so much pressure on winning?
Yeah.
And I referred back to, okay, everybody has a little bit of a bad day, but in general, you should be highly committed and highly motivated to do what you do. And of course, athletes sometimes, they, I use my sport, water polo, they come to the pool, but they don't really feel like it today. They're really going to make sure that there's a switch in their mind to jump in the pool. But if that happens on a regular basis, like if I have to really push you into the pool, then something is off. Like if your peers or your leaders have to push your chair behind the desk, then something is off. So you can be flexible in the process, as in you can really look at the person's personal life, but in the end, it's also a part of the commitment of the individual themselves.
I love it. I love what you just said there. It makes perfect sense to me. Before we go on, share a little bit more about your water polo experience, because I know it's a sport that's dear to your heart.
Yes. Look, first of all, water polo it's a rough team sport, and people think about water polo and they know they're on the water cameras. There's a lot of stuff going on. It's like an iceberg. You only see the face, so that's the 20%, and 80% happens on the water. It's a very respectable sport. It's Olympic sport. Like Australia did really well on it. In the women, they got a Sydney gold medal. Maybe everybody can remember that. And then 2 bronze medals, and they're really on steam for 2020. So my passion in water polo is especially with emerging athletes. That just started work or uni or still on the last year of high school, and how they're juggling those kind of, for them, big influences in still try to achieve their passion or their goal. So yeah, that's I can talk about this all day, obviously.
Yes, and I'll share your details in a minute. So if you've got more questions or you'd like to find out more information, we'll share some information so people can get in contact with you. So we've got a few minutes left, so I'd love to get your thoughts. So you've given us some tools here for flexible thinking. Are you able to
Yes.
pass your 5 top tips?
Yeah, so another tip, and it maybe sounds so easy. We got another KPI, but this time it comes from the athlete themselves, or even from you as a leader or a coach. I think it has to come from all levels, and that's like keep personally inspired, and with keep I mean continuously be challenged. So what motivates you, what thrives you, and the biggest thing is share that. And it's not always that your manager or your leader have to go to the work floor and really initiate conversations. You gotta be open as well towards that person. So share what keeps you inspired. All right, make the group or even your leader an owner of your goal. So in that case, it comes and it works as both connections intertwine, really, and that's what make flexible working so successful, because then you can really share what your passion is, and then other people and yourself can really fit those goals together. So keeping personally inspired, share. It's not only about goal setting, but continuously be challenged. And often we ask the question like, "Are you okay?" And we turn that around into a different setting. And, okay, how are you? And it really comes down to, okay, how are you with your goals? How are you? What have you been up to? What do you want to achieve in the next, let's say, 2 weeks or so? Where do you really want to pinpoint? And often that it creates really that bond that opens other opportunities and strategies to put in place for example, planning long-term or short-term.
I love that, because often we think about that conversation every 6 or 12 months in business. And I had a gentleman share his story recently where he worked remotely overseas. And he did that, and his boss said, "Yep, I'm happy for you to take a year working." His wife was posted somewhere overseas, so he went with her. And he said the best thing was the manager had said, "Every week I just want you to give me an update of where you're at." And he said, whilst some people would think that felt like micromanagement or, whatever other term you put along with it, he said it was actually really empowering. And I think what you said there, because it was that constant ongoing conversation around, okay, what's your 30-day plan? What's your 60-day plan? What's your 90-day plan? And so he felt really invested in the process. So it was a very different way of thinking about it. And this was quite a highly experienced role that this person was filling, or that he had, and the role that he was filling. So it wasn't a junior type level role, which I took away, as a key lesson, like you said there, around it is about how can we as managers apply that coaching methodology and approach.
Oh, I totally agree. And hopefully everybody can agree on this, that it doesn't matter what business you're in. Like, again, we're guiding people that are standing on their, like, really footsteps of their career. And it's in sport, it's in music. They really want to have this, this aspiring goal to reach. And some of them, they're on, they're already committed to Olympics, for example, and they want to go to a third one. They're in a totally different stage of life. And I think Michael Jordan said you have to expect things of yourself before you can do them. And I really like what you said there, Vanessa, that it's so good to hear that feedback and to really see, even on different levels, like on high executive levels, that people really appreciate that it's actually not micromanagement or whatever term, but it actually really contributes to their ongoing, performances.
Absolutely. All right. Is there anything else you'd like to cover and share with us today?
As a summary, I think, we can obviously talk about this all day, like we said before, but like knowing personal interest, it's not the KPI that we know we have a fibrillation, but knowing personal interest, keep personally inspired, and then really put people first. Like, doesn't matter if it's sport or business, put people first, and then look into leadership. How does the process take place? And then you can talk about performance, because eventually you want to have that success. It doesn't matter where and how.
Wonderful. Thank you for your insights. Now, you run a fantastic organisation called Eye for Bright. How about you share a little bit with the audience today around what you do?
Yeah, so we thank you for that. We share stories to begin with from high aspiring and highly skilled individuals or teams. And what we do then is we guide them online and face to face, and making sure that their planning matches with what they want to achieve. And we touch base with them, and we make sure that they're on the right track. So it doesn't matter if you're in sport, doesn't matter if you're in education, it doesn't matter if you're in business. We just really want to make sure that you perform and go towards that level in any kind of situation where you are and what you want to do.
Beautiful, with that focus, like you said, on that high performance. And I love how you always focus on people. Every time we speak, it's always that coming back to individuals and people. Thank you very much, Bjorn, for your time today.
Thank you, Vanessa, for having me on the workshop webinar.
Oh, you're welcome. And you're a wonderful Flexible Working Day ambassador. We love your work, and we hope you enjoyed this flexible working workshop. Making flexible working workshop. It's always a mouthful, that. Yeah, and like we said, if you'd like to know more, jump on the I for Bright website and reach out to Bjorn today. Thank you.
Thank you.